All right, welcome back. My name is Second Lieutenant Flood. Moving forward with our series today, we're talking about the Spanish-American War. Think back to the Mexican-American War. Why was that an important conflict for the U.S.? Aside from securing victory, which was the most important thing in any conflict, what else did the U.S. gain? That's right, they also gained a lot of territory and a lot of land. And the same thing will be true for the Spanish-American War. So let's get started. In the spring of 1898, the U.S. entered into war against Spain over the colonial territories of Cuba and the Philippines. A little quick review. Colonies, remember, they are essentially territories that belong to a country that's somewhere else. Americans at one point in time were a British colony, and at one point in time, Cuba and the Philippines belonged to Spain. And the U.S. is sensing that these people want to be liberated from Spain, and being people that were once colonized themselves, they want to help them do that. And this is going to get Spain pretty upset, causing the U.S. to enter into conflict with Spain. Okay. The Spanish-American War is also important because it begins to distinguish America as a world power. So to this point, we're seeing skirmishes with Mexico, ourselves, but now we're taking on a European power as the U.S. So we're kind of signifying to the world that North America is our domain and we don't want to be messed with. The Spanish-American War is also going to be including our famous president, Teddy Roosevelt, and his Rough Riders, a very well-known cavalry regiment. Finally, before you get into the meat and potatoes of this conflict, it's important to note that this war, unlike others, was more deadly not from the enemy, but from disease. So typhoid is going to be claiming more lives in the Spanish-American War than Spain themselves. Let's talk about the role of Iowa in the Spanish-American War. So the Iowa National Guard provides 4 infantry regiments, 2 light artillery batteries, and 1 signal company. And again, similar to the Civil War, Iowa will also be providing 1 African-American infantry company. The 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th infantry regiments were renumbered as they became a part of the Army, the Federal Army, to the 49th, the 50th, 51st, and 52nd. All these regiments were mustered into service at a very important place that in August many Iowans flocked to. And you guess what that might be? That's right, the State Fairgrounds. So at the State Fairgrounds, you'll probably notice there's some areas, especially like the racetrack, that are very big and open. So these would be where people from Iowa were brought into before they were shipped off to service to fight against Spain. And not an Iowan, but named for the state of Iowa, the USS Iowa served along the coast of Cuba during the Spanish-American War, a very important vessel. Let's talk about the role of Iowans. The 51st Infantry Regiment, later to become the 168th Infantry Regiment, which is a National Guard unit, deployed to the Philippines to support the quelling of the Philippine insurrection. So remember, Philippines and Cuba were 2 territories that the U.S. is fighting in. The 168 in the Spanish-American War, the 51st Infantry Regiment, were sent to the Philippines to help with this conflict. If you were to take a look at, on your own time, you can look up the 168 Infantry crest. You'll notice a palm tree in that crest. This actually was inspired by the presence of the 168 in the Philippines. So pretty interesting, and that the crest has a lot of ties to this conflict. So throughout the fighting, as I mentioned before, typhoid claimed a lot of lives of Americans, more so than the Spanish did. But eventually, Spain was overwhelmed by America's forces, and the U.S. is going to be victorious over Spain. And so, at the Treaty of Paris, which was signed on December 10th of 1898, the U.S. was given Spanish territories, and these territories included Cuba, Puerto Rico, Philippines, Guam, and other smaller islands that were once owned by the Spanish. And so this is important to note because, again, it's expanding U.S. territory, and it's showing that the U.S. is a prominent force to be reckoned with on an international scale. So, with your classmates or on your own, some questions to take away, some things to think about as you move forward is, now that the U.S. is showing that they are a major player on the global scale, what effect will that have on how the world sees the U.S.? And how is that effect different than when the U.S. first became a country? How is the U.S. beginning to change from simply a former colony of the British to now a world power? Think about these questions, and we will see you next time.